This is a series where we talk about the photographic careers of many actors. And seriously though, did you ever think I was going to talk about the photography career of a true icon, legend in the filmmaking history, the forever image of the rebel without a cause, and arguably one of the best actors of all time? I mean, was really James Dean a photographer? And I guess that I found this book here, and today, together, you and me, are going to discover whether or not James Dean was a photographer, and, well, what did he photograph? So without further ado, let's just go straight into another video. James Byron Dean was born in 1931 in Marion, Indiana, and after some tumultuous events in his childhood, he settled with his uncle and aunt in Fairmount in the same state. After completing high school, he moved to California, where he eventually studied drama at the UCLA, and he ended up dropping out after some time in order to pursue a serious acting career. And while he started by working on commercials and little walk-on roles, Dean was helped by people like Rogers Brackett and James Whitmore, who together mentored him, giving him advice, helping him with roles, and eventually convincing him to move to New York City, where he would soon join the Actors Studio. The Actors Studio was then a prestigious acting school where Dean would study method acting under the tutelage of Lee Strasberg. And while studying, his acting career started to pick up with participations in both TV and theater, which eventually led to Hollywood calls and movies like East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant. However, in the midst of all this, Dean was approached one day by a photographer who wanted to make a shoot with him. The photographer's name was Roy Schatt, but before this iconic shoot happened, Dean asked for something in return. He would like Schatt to give him photography lessons. And so I just quickly wanted to say that this video is more or less like 90% based on the information I found on this book, all the images and etc. So I want you to take this video as a glimpse or probably a speculation on what James Dean's photography was or what it could have been. And this book, as we go along and we see the images, you'll see that these are just mainly taken from sessions where James Dean was learning about photography. He probably was learning how to take photos, depth of field, aperture, all of that. So we can't discuss it in terms of like a finished work, or we can't consider it as being marvelous, because looking at these, they strike me as being like sketches, like when we're learning how to draw, how to paint, how to photograph. It's a sketch of what can be. And so we have to judge these by the potential they have. And if you know me and you know my channel, you know that I like to be positive about things, and I like to influence you into looking at things from a positive perspective, meaning we need to find value in a lot of things. Kind of like what William Eggleston said of having a democratic eye. And so looking at these, I find a lot of value in them, and I really think that we can learn a thing or two from this book. And in this case, there's a lot of examples of portraits in this book, because Roy Schatt, one of the things that he convinced James Dean to do was to participate in a contest, a local portrait contest. So they were training more or less James Dean in order to learn photography and etc., but mostly also to take an interest in portrait. The reason why I've always been drawn to certain portraiture work and certain photographers like Dorothea Lange or Don McCullin, for example, whose work isn't primarily portraits, but rather photojournalism or documentation, if we can also put it this way, is because they emphasize and have a great eye for dramatism and to capture human condition. And what I see in these early James Dean photos is the idea that it's not about making people look perfect or like models, but the expression on their faces, their demeanor, or their gaze. It's about making these subjects more human and explore the immense possibilities of picturing human condition through their image and through portrait work. And that has got to be one of the most noble reasons, in my opinion, to ever take someone's portrait. And this is possibly one of the main messages I'd like you to take from this video, which is to think of your subjects as your canvas, but also as having a powerful presence of their own, whose essence we need to respect and capture in whatever way it does justice to them, either by studying the light and shadow, like James Dean does in various compositions, or perhaps just by being spontaneous and unapologetic like he does on other occasions. And so what's important here is to capture one of the biggest things that makes us human, which is the capacity to feel things. And so by looking at some of Jimmy's work, I get this idea of a photographer who is trying to capture the emotion of his subject while also evoking an emotion in me, the viewer, making me recognize those feelings, sympathize with the subject, and ultimately emotionally engage with this image of a total stranger. And I think this connection to dramatism and human condition is rooted, of course, in his acting background and, more importantly, in his method acting technique. And in very basic terms, method acting distinguishes itself from other more classical acting theories or styles by being primarily emotionally driven, rather than action-based, thus encouraging the actor to be more truthful by living and exploring the character to a full emotional extent. And because I've had this book for quite some time, when I first got it, it really inspired me into doing some portrait work, and I've done that, and all I did was to ask a couple of friends to sit with me and just discuss what they were feeling and how was I going to capture them, how did they feel comfortable in being captured, and just playing around with the light. And it really was, I think, a couple of sessions that I did that really inspired me into doing more portrait work in the future, but also I learned a lot with. And I really would urge you to do the same, to just explore if portrait is something for you. What could you take out of it? Just respect your subject, just capture that nature, capture that dramatism, that sort of so many photographers did. And this is what I find brilliant in doing photography videos and getting inspiration from all these photographers we've been talking about in the channel. And so today we've talked about James Dean, who wasn't necessarily a photographer that is popular, that is widely known. He was widely known for his acting career, but nonetheless has something to teach us and that we can learn with. So yeah, I hope that you stay safe, you keep shooting film, and I'll see you here for another video very soon. Peace.
Every night I hope and pray, oh, that your loving baby will come my way. Now go to sleep.